The Felony Friendly Job Fair is designed to help put former offenders in contact with employers who have a good place for them to work. And what I want to talk to this group today about is how best to present your background to prospective employers, whether at the job fair or just as you're out looking for your next position someplace. There are a lot of things that you probably need to understand about the background investigation process and what employers are really looking for. And I hope I can help you understand some of that today.
What is included in a background check?
Okay, most people when they're talking about a background check that they're going to use in employment are really talking about criminal history. And that includes a misdemeanor and felony criminal search. And in the old days, a background check would only look at about 7 years of research of history. But nowadays, because computer records go back so far, we sometimes report criminal records back to the 1970s to employers. So that's what most people are including in a background check. And then there's also some basic research to verify that you are who you say you are if you're the job applicant. Some employers for some positions, especially cash handling positions and things like that, will also run a credit report, or if you'll be driving in the context of your employment, they may be pulling a driving history or something like that on you as well.
What should I tell my prospective employer about my criminal history?
Be honest. That's the best thing I can tell you is tell them everything. They will more than likely find out. If not when you're initially hired, at some point down the road, they will find out. And I've talked to a lot of my clients who've had to terminate someone after they hired them because they found out later that they were dishonest during the employment application process. Most employment applications do ask a question about criminal history. Some only ask about felony convictions, but to be honest, the employers care about misdemeanors as well. And so it's best, regardless of what the question is, it's best for you as an applicant to put your most honest face forward and tell them everything that's gone on in your background, along with what's happened since you were released from incarceration or you completed your probation or wherever you are in the process. The best thing you can do is appear honest and demonstrate what you've done since your past mistakes to move forward and integrate back into society and be a productive member of society.
Is there something that I can do to clean up my criminal history?
Not really. Where credit and other kinds of items in your past may drop off your background investigation after 7 years, criminal convictions are there forever. So you're going to be answering questions about this, unfortunately, probably for the rest of your working life. So it's important that you find a good employer who's, and you're upfront with them, about your history, and as best you can be, and then ideally you'll stay there and you'll never have to make that explanation again. But just expect that that's going to happen again and again.
My lawyer said that my deferred adjudication wouldn't be on my record. Will it show up?
It will. Unfortunately, a lot of former defendants are under the impression that certain items aren't going to be on their record, and I think what happens is their lawyers tell them this won't be on your record. And what the lawyers are thinking is it's not going to be on your record as a conviction. So you serve the probation and you do your good time and the case is dismissed and it won't be a conviction. However, employers who do a good background check are going to see it and they're going to ask about it because, especially in a pretrial diversion or a deferred adjudication or any kind of intervention program where you defer prosecution or conviction or adjudication of the case, you either pled no contest to the offense, or just not or guilty, and admitted that you were responsible for those actions. And once you've done that, the employer certainly cares because the employer doesn't care. His concern is not were you convicted or what were the standards of beyond a reasonable doubt. His concern is this person safe in my work environment, and so he's going to start making decisions based on his best interest and the best interest of his company.
Do most all employers pull background checks now?
The last number I saw was that about 70% of employers are pulling some sort of background check. We have clients who run background checks that average about $60, and then I've got other clients whose average background check is about $950. So there's a wide range in what you call a background check, but it's all weighted according to the risk associated with those positions. You've got people who are driving, and so there's a certain kind of background check you want to make sure you're doing for drivers. Make sure they operate safely. Your people you're handling cash or easily removable assets. You want to have a certain kind of background check for them. But if you're going to go hire a CFO for your company, you're going to do a lot more in-depth background check for him and make sure that all your bases are covered there too.
How do I find out what will be on my background check?
Well, the best thing I can tell you there is assume that it's all going to be on there. As data becomes more and more available and reporting systems become better, there's going to be more and more information about your criminal background check out there. And it may be that your last job, whatever background check they did or didn't run, didn't reflect some record that you knew was back there. It may well show up on the next background check. One of the major employers here in Tarrant County fired their CEO a couple years ago. He'd worked with the company over 20 years, and they fired him because after 20 years with the company and after he rose to the top of the organization as the CEO, they found that he had lied on his resume about his education, and they fired him. You don't want to be in that position down the road where you weren't honest with your employer, and you lose a job that you've been really successful at because you lied coming in the door.
If I was convicted as a juvenile, do I still have to put that in the application?
If you were tried as a juvenile, will not show up in most background checks. Now there are certain positions that are where the state will release to the employer juvenile convictions, especially if you're working with children or really vulnerable populations. Some of your juvenile actions will be reported to employers too. And quite honestly, depending on how old you are now and how much time's passed, you probably want to consider being honest with the employer even about juvenile offenses.
Do I have to tell employers about cases that weren't convictions?
You don't have to unless the employer asks. Okay, but if the employer asks, you certainly need to tell them and be honest with them about everything. In Texas, there's no limitation on employers inquiring about about past cases that weren't convictions. For instance, deferred adjudications where you might have served probation and the case was dismissed upon completion of that probation. That's not a conviction, but an employer cares about it. You admitted in court that you committed that offense. An employer cares about it, and it's best for you to have to explain that information to the employer beforehand, rather than when they get the background check and the information's on there then, and now you're having to explain after the fact. So what happened, and that never looks good for the applicant. It's always better to be as upfront as possible.